The sky above Earth was unusually clear that morning. The sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across fields, cities, and oceans. It seemed like any other day. People waking up, going to work, or heading to school. But deep in space, something was coming. Something no one on Earth could have predicted. Far beyond the moon, a fleet of alien ships appeared out of nowhere. They were massive, so big they blocked out parts of the stars behind them. These weren't just spaceships. They looked like floating fortresses, bristling with weapons and glowing with strange energy. No one knew where they had come from or how long they had been watching. But their arrival sent shockwaves through every government on the planet. At first, humanity thought it might be peaceful. After all, this was Earth's first real contact with an alien species. Scientists and leaders hoped for communication, maybe even friendship. That hope didn't last long. The aliens, who called themselves the Vorn, sent a message to Earth. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't kind. It was a demand for surrender. Commander Xylar, the leader of the Vorn fleet, spoke through a broadcast that reached every corner of the globe. His voice was cold and mechanical, translated into thousands of languages by advanced technology. "We are the Vorn," he said. "Your world belongs to us now. Resist, and you will be destroyed." People froze when they heard those words. Some refused to believe it. Others panicked. Crowds gathered in streets, staring up at the sky as if expecting the invaders to descend at any moment. In homes, families huddled around TVs and radios, listening to endless reports about what was happening. Governments held emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to respond. But nothing could prepare anyone for what came next. High above Earth's atmosphere, the Vorn began moving closer. Their ships formed a tight formation surrounding the planet like a cage. From orbit, they scanned the surface, studying cities, military bases, and power grids. Every movement they made was precise, calculated. It was clear they had planned this invasion for a long time. Back on Earth, Alex Carter sat in his small apartment, glued to the news. He was an engineer in his late 20s, working at a top-secret military research facility. Normally, his life revolved around equations, blueprints, and experiments. But today, none of that mattered. Like everyone else, he couldn't stop thinking. About the Vorn, Alex wasn't the type to get emotional easily. He preferred logic and reason over fear or panic. Still, even he felt uneasy. The Vorn's ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Their technology was far beyond Earth's capabilities. Fighter jets, missiles, tanks, all of it would be useless against such overwhelming power. For the first time in his life, Alex wondered if there was any way to fight back. His phone buzzed suddenly, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a text from his boss. "Report to HQ immediately." Alex frowned. This was unusual. The facility rarely called employees outside. Normal hours unless something urgent was happening. Grabbing his jacket, he left his apartment and headed to the lab. When Alex arrived, the place was buzzing with activity. Scientists and technicians rushed between rooms, carrying laptops, papers, and equipment. In the main conference room, a group of people stood around a large table, staring at a holographic display of the Vorn fleet. At the center of the group was Lieutenant Rachel Dawson, a pilot known for her skill and bravery during recent conflicts in Earth's orbit. Rachel noticed Alex enter and gave him a quick nod. She was younger than most officers, barely in her mid-20s, but she carried herself with confidence. Her sharp eyes and steady demeanor made her seem older than she actually was. Alex had worked with her before on a few projects, and he respected her determination. "Glad you're here," Rachel said as Alex joined the group. "We've got a situation." One of the scientists stepped forward. His name was Dr. Emily Fields, a brilliant physicist leading Project Horizon, a secret initiative aimed at developing experimental weapons to counter extraterrestrial threats. She pointed to the hologram of the Vorn fleet. "This is bad," she said bluntly. "Their technology is generations ahead of ours. If we try to fight them head-on, we'll lose." A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Everyone knew she was right. The Vorn's shields were impenetrable, their weapons devastating. Even Earth's best defenses wouldn't stand a chance. But we do have one advantage, Emily continued. She tapped a button on the table and the hologram zoomed in on one of the larger ships in the fleet. This is their command ship. It's the heart of their operation, the brains behind everything they do. Without it, their entire fleet falls apart. Alex leaned closer, studying the image. The command ship was enormous, bigger than the others combined. Its surface shimmered with intricate patterns of light, indicating some kind of protective shielding. "How do we take it down?" he asked. "That's where you come in," Emily replied. She gestured toward a set of blueprints lying on the table. Project Horizon has been working on a prototype weapon, an energy cannon capable of emitting pulses strong enough to disrupt advanced systems. We call it Skybreaker. If we can get close enough to use it on their command ship, we might be able to disable it. Rachel crossed her arms. Might? You mean there's no guarantee? Emily hesitated. It's still in testing. There are risks. But if it works, it's our only shot. Alex finished for her. He glanced at Rachel, then back at the blueprints. Despite the odds, a spark of hope ignited within him. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance after all. Over the next few hours, the team dove into planning. Alex focused on refining Skybreaker's design, making adjustments to improve its efficiency. Rachel studied flight paths and strategies for getting past the Vorn's defenses. Meanwhile, Emily coordinated with other scientists to gather data on the enemy's technology. As night fell, the pressure mounted. Outside the facility, cities buzzed with anxiety. People stayed indoors, glued to their screens, waiting for updates. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the government was hiding information, while others insisted the Vorn were already landing troops. Fear gripped the world. Inside the lab, Alex tried to block out the chaos. He poured all his focus into his work, running simulations and tweaking calculations. But doubt lingered in the back of his mind. What if Skybreaker failed? What if the Vorn were truly unstoppable? Rachel noticed his hesitation and walked over. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Alex sighed. "I don't know. This feels impossible." She smiled faintly. Impossible is just another word for not done yet. Look, I've faced tough odds before. So have you. We've got this. Her words helped, but only a little. Alex knew she was right. They had to try. Failure wasn't an option. Not when the fate of the entire planet hung in the balance. By dawn, the team had finalized their plan. Skybreaker would be mounted on a modified fighter jet, piloted by Rachel. A small squad of support pilots would accompany her, each carrying smaller versions of the weapon. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Vorn blockade, reach the command ship, and fire Skybreaker at its weakest point. It was risky, almost suicidal, but it was also their best and only chance. As Alex watched Rachel climb into the cockpit of the test aircraft later that morning, he felt a mix of pride and dread. Pride because she was brave enough to take on such a dangerous task. Dread because he wasn't sure she'd make it back. The engines roared to life and the jet lifted, off the ground, soaring into the sky. For a moment, Alex allowed himself to imagine success, to picture the Vorn fleet scattering, their invincibility shattered. Then reality hit him again. This was just the beginning. The hardest part was yet to come, and somewhere high above Earth, the Vorn waited, unaware that humanity was preparing to strike back. The days following the team's decision to strike back were filled with tension. Every second counted, and the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on everyone involved. Alex Carter spent most of his time in the lab, surrounded by glowing monitors and scattered papers. His hands moved quickly as he adjusted circuits, rewired components, and ran simulations for Skybreaker. The weapon was humanity's last hope, and he couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Rachel Dawson wasn't idle either. She trained tirelessly in flight simulators, practicing maneuvers that would help her evade the Vorn's defenses. Her squadron practiced alongside her, though none of them had faced anything like the enemy they were about to confront. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but Rachel refused to let fear take hold. Instead, she focused on preparation, drilling her team until every move became instinctive. Dr. Emily Fields worked closely with Alex, double-checking his calculations and offering suggestions to improve Skybreaker's performance. Together they fine-tuned the weapon, ensuring it could deliver the kind of energy pulse needed to disrupt the Vorn's advanced systems. Emily often reminded herself and the others that even the smallest error could mean failure. There was no room for mistakes. Outside the facility, the world continued to spiral into chaos. News outlets broadcast non-stop updates about the Vorn fleet, showing images of their massive ships hovering ominously in orbit. Cities around the globe braced for the worst, with people evacuating urban centers or barricading themselves indoors. Governments issued emergency alerts, urging citizens to stay calm while preparing for potential attacks. Despite these efforts, panic spread like wildfire. Alex sometimes found himself glancing at the news feeds during breaks. He saw videos of crowded streets, families packing up cars, and children crying as their parents tried to reassure them. It was hard not to feel overwhelmed. How could anyone remain hopeful when the future seemed so uncertain? But then he'd look back at his workbench, at the pieces of Skybreaker scattered across it, and remind himself why he was doing this. If humanity stood any chance at all, it was because of what they were building right now. One evening, after hours of testing, Emily called Alex and Rachel into the conference room. On the table was a holographic map of Earth and the surrounding space, showing the positions of the Vorn fleet. The command ship loomed large in the center, its size dwarfing the other vessels. Smaller ships patrolled nearby, forming a tight, defensive perimeter. "We've analyzed their patterns," Emily began, pointing to the map. "The Vorn rely heavily on their command ship to coordinate movements. Without it, their fleet becomes disorganized. That's our target." Rachel nodded, studying the display. "Getting close won't be easy. Those smaller ships will tear us apart before we can reach the command ship." "That's where Skybreaker comes in," Alex added. "If we can disable their shields even for a moment, we might have a shot." Emily tapped the table, zooming in on the command ship. "There's one more thing. We've detected fluctuations in their shield matrix. It happens randomly, but if we time our attack just right, we can exploit it." Rachel frowned. "Random fluctuations? You're saying we'll need luck on top of everything else?" "It's not just luck," Emily said firmly. "We'll monitor the shield closely and guide you in real time. When the opening appears, you'll know exactly when to strike." Alex leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "And if we miss?" Emily didn't answer immediately. The silence hung heavy in the room. Finally, she spoke. "Then we'll have to regroup and try again. But we won't get many chances. The Vorn aren't going to sit back and wait for us to figure things out." The gravity of the situation settled over them. This wasn't just a mission. It was a gamble, a risky, high-stakes plan that depended on precision, timing, and a bit of faith. None of them liked the odds, but they also knew there was no alternative. As the meeting ended, Rachel pulled Alex aside. "You really think this thing will work?" she asked, gesturing toward the blueprints of Skybreaker. Alex hesitated. He wanted to say yes, to sound confident and reassuring, but honesty got the better of him. "I don't know," he admitted. "But it's the best we've got." Rachel smiled faintly. "That's good enough for me." Over the next few days, the team worked around the clock to prepare for the attack. Skybreaker was mounted onto Rachel's fighter jet, a sleek aircraft, modified for speed and agility. The smaller versions of the weapon were distributed among her squadron, each pilot briefed on their role in the operation. Meanwhile, Alex and Emily monitored the Vorn fleet, searching for signs of the shield fluctuations they needed to exploit. Tensions ran high. Everyone felt the pressure of knowing that failure meant the end, not just for them, but for humanity itself. Conversations were brief and focused, with little time for anything beyond the task at hand. Meals were eaten standing up, coffee cups piled up on desks, and sleep became a luxury few could afford. Despite the stress, moments of camaraderie broke through. Late one night, Rachel stopped by the lab to check on Alex. She found him hunched, Over a workstation, eyes bloodshot from hours of staring at screens. "You should rest," she said, leaning against the doorway. "I'm fine," Alex replied without looking up. "Just running another simulation." "You're going to burn yourself out," Rachel said, stepping closer. "Skybreaker isn't going to fire itself, but it won't do much good if you collapse before the mission." Alex chuckled weakly. "Point taken." Rachel grabbed a chair and sat beside him. "Listen, I know this feels impossible, but we've faced tough situations before. We'll get through this too." "Yeah," Alex muttered, rubbing his temples. "It's just, what if we're wrong? What if this doesn't work?" "Then, we'll find another way," Rachel said simply. "We always do." Her confidence was contagious, and for a moment Alex allowed himself to believe her. Maybe they did have a chance. Maybe humanity could pull off the impossible. Finally, the day of the attack arrived. The facility buzzed with nervous energy as pilots suited up and technicians performed final checks on the aircraft. Outside, the sky was overcast, gray clouds casting a somber mood over the launch site. Rachel stood near her jet, helmet in hand, watching as the ground crew made last-minute adjustments. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her expression calm. Fear wouldn't help anyone now. Alex approached her, carrying a tablet with live data from the Vorn fleet. "Shield activity is stable for now," he said, "but Emily says fluctuations are likely within the hour." Rachel nodded. "Good. Let's hope it holds off until we're in position." "You ready for this?" Alex asked, his voice quieter than usual. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rachel replied. She glanced at him, seeing the worry etched on his face. "Don't worry, Alex. We've got this." Before Alex could respond, the sound of engines roaring to life filled the air. One by one, the jets taxied onto the runway, their sleek forms gleaming under the dim light. Rachel climbed into her cockpit, fastening her harness and powering up the systems. Through her headset, she heard the voices of her squadron, checking in and confirming readiness. "All right, team," she said, her voice steady. "This is it. Stick to the plan, watch your targets, and trust each other. We're making history today." The jets accelerated down the runway, lifting off into the sky. Below, Alex watched them disappear into the clouds, his stomach churning, with a mix of hope and dread. He returned to the control room where Emily and the rest of the team monitored the operation from a safe distance. Screens displayed live footage of the jets ascending toward orbit, their paths marked by trails of vapor. As the squadron approached the edge of Earth's atmosphere, the Vorn fleet came into view. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying. The alien ships loomed like mountains, their surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Smaller vessels darted between them, patrolling the area with deadly efficiency. Rachel tightened her grip on the controls, her focus razor-sharp. Behind her, the rest of the squadron formed a tight formation, ready to follow her lead. Ahead, the command ship pulsed with energy, its shield rippling like liquid metal. "This is it," Rachel whispered to herself. "Time to show them what we're made of." On the ground, Alex stared at the monitors, his heart racing. The battle was about to begin, and humanity's fate rested in the hands of a small group of brave individuals. Failure wasn't an option, but neither was giving up. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The moment Rachel Dawson and her squadron crossed into orbit, the tension in the air was palpable. The Vorn fleet loomed ahead, a wall of steel and energy that seemed impossible to breach. Rachel's fingers tightened on the controls as she scanned the area, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Behind her, the rest of the squadron followed closely, their jets forming a tight formation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one advantage: surprise. Back on Earth, Alex. Carter sat in the control room, his eyes glued to the monitors. Each screen displayed a different angle of the operation: live feeds from the jet's cameras, radar maps tracking the Vorn ships, and data streams showing the status of Skybreaker. Beside him, Dr. Emily Fields worked tirelessly, analyzing shield fluctuations and relaying updates to Rachel in real time. The entire team knew this was humanity's last stand, and the pressure weighed heavily on everyone. As the squadron approached the outer edge of the Vorn blockade, Rachel activated the stealth systems on her jet. The smaller versions of Skybreaker, mounted on the other aircraft, hummed softly, ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. For now, though, the goal was simple: stay undetected and find an opening. "Command, this is Dagger Leader," Rachel said into her headset, using her call sign. "We're approaching the perimeter. No signs of detection yet." "Copy that, Dagger Leader," came Emily's voice over the comms. "Keep your speed steady. We're monitoring shield activity. Fluctuations are minimal for now, but we'll alert you the moment something changes." Rachel acknowledged the message and focused on navigating the field of enemy ships. The Vorn vessels moved with eerie precision, their movements synchronized as if controlled by a single mind. It was unnerving, but also predictable, a fact Rachel intended to exploit. Suddenly, one of the smaller Vorn ships broke formation and began moving toward the squadron. Its sleek design glinted in the sunlight as it scanned the area with bright beams of light. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. Had they been spotted? "Stay calm," she whispered to her team. "Hold position and maintain stealth. Let's see what it does." The alien ship drifted closer, its sensors sweeping across the empty space where the squadron hovered. Seconds felt like hours as the pilots held their breath, waiting for the worst. But then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the ship turned and rejoined the blockade. Rachel exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. "That was too close," muttered Jake Miller, one of the squadron members, over the comms. "Focus, Dagger 2, Rachel replied sharply. "We're not done yet." Meanwhile, in the control room, Alex watched the close call unfold on the monitors. His hands clenched into fists as he realized how easily the mission could have ended before it even began. He glanced at Emily, who was typing furiously on her keyboard. "We need to move faster," Alex said, his voice tense. "Every second we delay gives them more time to detect us." Emily nodded without looking up. "I'm working on it. Shield. Fluctuations are still minimal, but I'm adjusting the parameters to narrow the window. When it happens, we'll know exactly when to strike." Alex forced himself to take a deep breath. Panicking wouldn't help anyone. Instead, he turned his attention back to the screens, watching as Rachel led the squadron deeper into the blockade. Step by step, they were getting closer to the command ship, the key to turning the tide of the battle. Several minutes passed, and the squadron reached the inner layer of the blockade. Here, the Vorn ships were packed tightly together, their glowing surfaces creating a maze of light and shadow. Rachel guided her jet carefully, weaving between the larger vessels while keeping an eye on her radar. Any sudden movement could give away their position. "Command, this is Dagger Leader," she said quietly. "We're inside the inner perimeter. Visibility is limited. Requesting updated intel on shield status." "Stand by, Dagger Leader," Emily replied. "Analyzing now." In the control room, Alex leaned forward, staring at the data streaming across the monitors. The shield around the command ship pulsed rhythmically, its energy levels fluctuating slightly. It wasn't enough to create an opening yet, but it was a start. "There," Emily exclaimed suddenly, pointing to a spike in the readings. "The shield is destabilizing. It's small, but it's there. If we can hit it during the next fluctuation, we might be able to punch through." Alex grabbed the mic. "Dagger Leader, this is Command. We've identified a potential weak point in the shield. Coordinates incoming. You'll have a 10-second window to fire Skybreaker. Timing is critical." "Understood, Command," Rachel replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She relayed the coordinates to her team and adjusted her course, steering her jet toward the target. The command ship loomed ahead, its massive bulk dominating the view. Smaller Vorn ships patrolled nearby, their weapons trained outward, ready to intercept any threat. "This is it," Rachel said to herself, her grip tightening on the controls. "Let's do this." As the squadron closed in, the shield around the command ship began to ripple again. On the ground, Emily monitored the fluctuations closely, calculating the exact moment the shield would weaken. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, narrowing the timing window to mere seconds. Window confirmed, Emily shouted. 10 seconds and counting. In the cockpit, Rachel's heart raced. She lined up her shot, aiming Skybreaker directly at the weak point. Behind her, the rest of the squadron prepared to provide cover fire, drawing attention away from her approach. 5 seconds, Alex called out, his voice tight with anticipation. Rachel steadied her breathing, focusing on the target ahead. The shield rippled once more, its glow dimming slightly. 3, 2, 1. Fire! Emily yelled. Rachel pulled the trigger. A blinding beam of energy erupted from Skybreaker, slamming into the weakened section of the shield. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening crackle, the shield collapsed, creating a gaping hole in the Vorn defenses. Yes, Alex shouted, jumping to his feet. It worked, but the celebration was short-lived. The Vorn ships immediately reacted to the breach, swarming toward the source of the attack. Alarms blared in Rachel's cockpit as enemy fighters closed in, their weapons charging. Dagger leader, you've got company, Emily warned. Hostiles inbound. I see them, Rachel replied, her voice cool under pressure. She banked hard to the left, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts. Dagger team, engage and cover my 6. The squadron sprang into action, firing their smaller versions of Skybreaker at the incoming Vorn ships. Explosions lit up the void of space as the human pilots fought desperately to hold their ground. Despite being outnumbered, their determination gave them an edge. Rachel didn't waste a moment. With the shield down, she accelerated toward the command ship, weaving through the chaos of the battle. Her jet shuddered as enemy fire grazed its wings, but she pushed forward, her focus unwavering. Almost there, she muttered, her eyes locked on the command ship's hull. Inside the control room, Alex and Emily watched anxiously as Rachel approached the final stage of the mission. The command ship's surface bristled with turrets and defensive systems, all zeroing in on her position. She's not going to make it, Alex whispered, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the desk. She has to, Emily replied, firmly. She's our only chance. Rachel gritted her teeth as warning lights flashed across her dashboard. Her jet was taking damage, but she couldn't stop now. With one final burst of speed, she positioned herself directly above the command ship's core and fired Skybreaker again. The weapon discharged a massive pulse of energy, striking the heart of the alien vessel. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the ship, causing explosions to erupt across its surface. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, with a deafening roar, the command ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Debris scattered in all directions, and the Vorn fleet faltered, their coordination disrupted. It's done, Rachel breathed, her body sagging with exhaustion. We did it. Back on Earth, the control room erupted into cheers. Alex sank into his chair, overwhelmed with relief and disbelief. Emily wiped tears from her eyes, laughing and crying at the same time. Against all odds, humanity had struck a blow against the invaders, but the victory came at a cost. As Rachel surveyed the wreckage of the battle, she saw the remains of several human jets drifting silently in space. Not everyone had made it back. Grief weighed heavily on her chest, but she knew their sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. The Vorn fleet began retreating, their formation breaking apart as they fled into the depths of space. Commander Zylar's voice crackled over the comms one last time. You have proven yourselves worthy adversaries, but this is not the end. Rachel stared at the retreating ships, her jaw set with resolve. Whatever came next, humanity would be ready. The explosion of the Vorn command ship sent shockwaves rippling through space. The massive vessel broke apart, its glowing fragments scattering like stars across the void. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. The chaos of the battle, the hum of engines, even the breaths of those who had survived. Then reality rushed back in. Rachel Dawson's jet floated amidst the wreckage, its systems damaged but still functional. Smoke curled from small cracks in the hull, and warning lights blinked incessantly on her dashboard. She ignored them, her eyes scanning the remnants of the battle. The Vorn fleet was retreating, their ships pulling away in disarray. Without the central command ship to guide them, Their once perfect coordination had crumbled. It was a victory, but it didn't feel like one. Behind her, only half of her squadron remained. The others were gone, lost in the chaos of the fight. Rachel clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay focused. There would be time to grieve later. Right now, she needed to get her team home. "Dagger team report," she said into her headset, her voice steady despite the weight in her chest. "Dagger, 2 here," came Jake Miller's voice, shaky but alive. "I'm holding together, but my shields are down." "Dagger 5 reporting," added another pilot, Maria Lopez. "Minor damage, but I can make it back." One by one, the surviving members of the squadron checked in. Each voice was a small relief, a reminder that they hadn't lost everyone. But the silence from those who didn't respond spoke louder than words. "All right, listen up," Rachel said, her tone firm. "We're heading back to Earth. Stick close and watch your fuel levels. We don't have much margin for error." As the jets turned toward home, Rachel glanced at the retreating Vorn ships. They were disappearing into the distance, leaving behind a trail of debris and unanswered questions. Commander Zylar's final message echoed in her mind. This is not the end. She believed him. The Vorn weren't the kind to give up easily. This victory was just the beginning of a much larger fight. Back on Earth, news of the success spread quickly. In the control room, Alex Carter and Dr. Emily Fields watched as live footage of the battle streamed across the monitors. The image of the command ship exploding replayed over and over, accompanied by cheers from the ground crew. People hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. For the first time in days, there was hope, but Alex couldn't bring himself to celebrate fully. He stared at the screen, his thoughts consumed by the cost of the mission. The faces of the fallen pilots flashed in his mind, men and women who had trusted him to build something that could save them. And while Skybreaker had worked, it hadn't been enough to protect everyone. Emily noticed his expression and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did good, Alex," she said softly. "Without you, none of this would have been possible." He nodded, though the words didn't ease the guilt gnawing at him. "It wasn't enough," he muttered. "Too many people died." "It never is," Emily replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "But we saved billions. That has to count for something." Alex sighed and turned back to the monitors. Rachel's jet was visible now, leading the surviving squadron back toward Earth. He zoomed in on the feed, watching as the damaged aircraft limped through the atmosphere. Every second felt agonizingly long, but eventually, they made it. The jets touched, down on the runway, greeted by a crowd of cheering soldiers and technicians. Rachel climbed out of her cockpit, her body stiff from hours of tension. She removed her helmet, revealing a face streaked with sweat and grime. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. When she spotted Alex and Emily, she walked over, her steps slow but determined. "You did it," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "You actually did it." Rachel gave him a faint smile. "We did it. All of us." Emily stepped forward, offering a handshake that turned into an awkward hug. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything." Rachel nodded, but her expression darkened as she looked past them at the empty spots on the tarmac where the missing jets should have been. "Not all of us made it," she said quietly. "We need to honor them, make sure their sacrifice means something." In the days that followed, humanity began to pick up the pieces. Cities that had been evacuated slowly came back to life as people returned to their homes. Governments held press conferences, praising the bravery of the pilots and the ingenuity of the scientists who had developed Skybreaker. The media hailed the mission as a turning point, a moment when humanity proved it could stand against even the most advanced enemies. But beneath the surface, tensions lingered. The Vorn's retreat was temporary, and everyone knew it. Their technology was still far superior, and their resources virtually limitless. This victory had bought Earth some time, but it wasn't permanent. The question on everyone's mind was simple: what happens next? At the research facility, Alex threw himself into improving Skybreaker. Now that they had proof the weapon worked, he wanted to refine it further, make it faster, stronger, more reliable. He spent long hours in the lab, surrounded by blueprints and prototypes driven by a mix of determination and guilt. If they had to face the Vorn again, he wanted to ensure no one else had to die. Rachel, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding her squadron. She visited the families of the fallen pilots, sharing stories of their courage and promising to carry their legacy forward. It wasn't easy. Each conversation left her feeling heavier, but she knew it was necessary. These weren't just names on a list. They were people who had given everything for the cause. During one of these visits, Rachel met a young boy named Ethan, the son of Dagger 4, Sarah Bennett. Ethan clung to a picture of his mother, his eyes wide with confusion and grief. Rachel knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Your mom was a hero," she told him. "She saved so many lives. I promise you, we won't forget her." Ethan looked up at her, his lower lip trembling. "Will they come back?" he asked, referring to the Vorn. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, they might. But if they do, we'll be ready. Your mom helped make sure of that." While Alex and Rachel worked to prepare for the future, Emily took on a different role. She traveled to various countries, presenting the findings of Project Aid Horizon to global leaders. Her goal was to unite humanity, not just militarily, but scientifically and culturally. The Vorn threat had shown how fragile Earth's divisions were. If humanity hoped to survive, they needed to work together like never before. Her efforts weren't without resistance. Some governments were reluctant to share resources or technology, clinging to old rivalries and fears. But Emily persisted, using data and logic to argue her case. Slowly, progress began to take shape. Joint research initiatives were launched, pooling knowledge and expertise from around the world. Factories ramped up production of Skybreaker units, equipping more fighters with the weapon that had turned the tide. Despite these advances, the looming shadow of the Vorn remained. Intelligence reports suggested that the invaders were regrouping, somewhere beyond the solar system, rebuilding their forces and planning their next move. Commander Zyler's parting words haunted everyone. "This is not the end." One evening, Alex found himself alone in the lab, staring at a holographic model of the Vorn command ship. Its destruction had been a triumph, but it also raised questions. How had the Vorn built such advanced technology? Where had they come from? And why had they targeted Earth? Rachel entered the room quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Alex and sat down beside him. "You're thinking too hard," she said, sipping her drink. "I can't stop," Alex admitted. "Every time I look at this, I wonder what we're missing. They're out there planning their next attack. What if we're not ready? We will be," Rachel said firmly. "Because we don't have a choice. Look at what we've already done. We faced something we thought was impossible and won. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we refuse to give up." Alex smiled, faintly. "When did you get so wise?" Rachel chuckled. "I hang around geniuses too much. Rubs off." They sat in silence for a while, watching the hologram rotate slowly. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the lab in soft orange light. Despite the challenges ahead, there was a sense of quiet resolve in the air. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness and resilience. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Weeks passed after the destruction of the Vorn command ship. The sense of relief that had swept across Earth began to fade, replaced by a growing unease. People celebrated the victory, but they also knew it was only temporary. The Vorn were still out there, regrouping and rebuilding. Every night, Rachel Dawson found herself staring at the stars, wondering when they would return. In the research facility, Alex Carter worked tirelessly to improve Skybreaker. He knew the weapon had been effective against the Vorn fleet, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. What if the next attack came with even more advanced technology? What if humanity's defenses fell short again? These questions drove him to push harder, test further, and think bigger. Dr. Emily Fields spent her days coordinating global efforts to prepare for another invasion. Scientists and engineers from around the world collaborated on new projects, developing upgrades for Skybreaker, and designing faster, stronger fighter jets. Factories churned out weapons and equipment at an unprecedented rate. Governments pooled resources, setting aside old rivalries in favor of survival. It was a fragile unity, but it held, for now. Despite these preparations, fear lingered. News outlets reported sightings of strange lights in the sky, sparking panic among civilians. Some claimed to have seen alien ships hovering over remote areas. Others swore they heard strange transmissions on their radios. Most of these reports were dismissed as hoaxes or misunderstandings, but they kept people on edge. Rachel tried to stay focused on training her squadron. She pushed them harder than ever before, drilling them on evasive maneuvers and precision targeting. Her pilots responded with determination, knowing their skills might mean the difference between life and death in the next battle. Still, Rachel couldn't ignore the empty spots on the roster where fallen comrades used to be. Each missing name reminded her of the cost of war. One evening, Rachel joined Alex in the lab. He was hunched over his workstation, surrounded by scattered notes and half-assembled prototypes. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, and his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted a circuit board. "You need to rest," Rachel said, leaning against the doorway. "I can't," Alex replied without looking up. "Every second I waste is another second they could use to come back stronger." Rachel stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're going to burn yourself out. We need you sharp, not exhausted." Alex sighed and leaned back in his chair. "I just keep thinking about what happens if we're not ready. If they come back and we fail." "They won't," Rachel interrupted firmly. "Because we're not going to let them. You've done everything you can. Trust that." Alex looked at her, searching for reassurance in her steady gaze. Finally, he nodded. "Okay. Maybe you're right." "Of course I'm right," Rachel said with a small smile. "Now go home, get some sleep, that's an order." The next morning, Emily called Alex and Rachel into the conference room. On the table was a holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. Tiny red dots blinked near the outer edges of the solar system. Vorn ships. "We've detected activity beyond Neptune," Emily explained, pointing to the map. "It's faint but consistent. They're gathering forces." "How many?" Rachel asked, her voice tight. "At least 3 times what we faced before," Emily replied. "And they're moving slowly, deliberately. They're planning something big." Alex clenched his fists. "We don't have enough skybreakers to take on a fleet like that." "No," Emily agreed. "But we do have one advantage. They don't know we're watching them. If we act quickly, we might be able to disrupt their plans before they're fully prepared." "What's the plan?" Rachel asked. Emily zoomed in on the map, highlighting a cluster of red dots. "This is their staging area. If we send a strike, team to hit it now, we can cripple their advance. It'll weaken their numbers and buy us more time to prepare." Rachel frowned. "That's deep in enemy territory. How do we get close enough without being detected?" "We use stealth tech," Emily said. "The same systems you used during the last mission, but upgraded. They'll mask your presence until you're within firing range." Alex shook his head. "Even with stealth, it's risky. One wrong move and they'll tear us apart." "It's our best shot," Emily insisted. "If we wait too long, they'll be unstoppable." Rachel glanced at Alex, then back at Emily. "All right, when do we leave?" Preparations for the mission began immediately. A small team of pilots was selected, including Rachel and Jake Miller. Their jets were outfitted with the latest versions of Skybreaker and enhanced stealth systems. Technicians worked around the clock to ensure every detail was perfect. Failure wasn't an option. As the launch date approached, tension filled the air. Pilots reviewed their roles in the operation, memorizing coordinates and timing windows. Engineers double-checked the weapons, while scientists monitored the Vorn fleet's movements. Everyone knew what was at stake. On the day of the mission, Rachel stood beside her jet, helmet in hand. Around her, the ground crew moved with quiet efficiency, performing final checks on the aircraft. The sky above was clear, but the weight of the task ahead pressed down on everyone. "You ready?" Alex asked, approaching her. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rachel replied. She gave him a determined smile. "Don't worry, we've got this." Alex nodded, though his expression remained uneasy. "Just come back, okay?" "I promise," Rachel said. Then she climbed into the cockpit, fastening her harness and powering up the systems. Through her headset, she heard the voices of her team checking in, confirming readiness. "All right, Dagger team," Rachel said, her voice steady. "Let's finish what we started." The jets accelerated down the runway, lifting off into the sky. Below, Alex watched them disappear into the clouds, his stomach churning with a mix of hope and dread. He returned to the control room, where Emily and the rest of the team monitored the operation. Hours later, the squadron reached the edge of the solar system. The Vorn ships loomed ahead, clustered together in a massive formation. Rachel activated the stealth systems, guiding her jet carefully through the field of enemy vessels. The others followed closely, their movements precise and silent. "Command, this is Dagger, leader," Rachel whispered into her headset. "We're in position, no signs of detection yet." "Copy that, Dagger, leader," Emily replied. "Stand by for shield analysis." Rachel held her breath as the seconds ticked by. The Vorn ships drifted lazily, their glowing surfaces casting eerie light across the void. Suddenly, one of the smaller vessels broke formation and began moving toward the squadron. "Stay calm," Rachel murmured to her team. "Hold position." The alien ship scanned the area, its sensors sweeping across the empty space where the squadron hovered. For a moment, it seemed like they had been spotted. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the ship turned and rejoined the formation. "That was close," Jake muttered over the comms. "Focus, Dagger 2, Rachel replied sharply. "We're not done yet." Moments later, Emily's voice crackled in their ears. "Shield fluctuations detected. 10-second window confirmed. Coordinates incoming." Rachel lined up her shot, aiming Skybreaker directly at the weak point. Behind her, the rest of the squadron prepared to provide cover fire. 5 seconds, Alex called out, his voice tense. Rachel steadied her breathing, focusing on the target ahead. The shield rippled once more, its glow dimming slightly. 3, 2, 1, fire! Emily shouted. Rachel pulled the trigger. A blinding beam of energy erupted from Skybreaker, slamming into the weakened section of the shield. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening crackle, the shield collapsed, creating a gaping hole in the Vorn defenses. "Yes," Alex shouted, jumping to his feet. "It worked." But the celebration was short-lived. The Vorn ships immediately reacted to the breach, swarming toward the source of the attack. Alarms blared in Rachel's cockpit as enemy fighters closed in, their weapons charging. "Dagger, leader, you've got company," Emily warned. "Hostiles inbound." "I see them," Rachel replied, her voice cool under pressure. She banked hard to the left, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts. "Dagger team, engage and cover my 6. The squadron sprang into action, firing their smaller versions of Skybreaker at the incoming Vorn ships. Explosions lit up the void of space as the human pilots fought desperately to hold their ground. Despite being outnumbered, their determination gave them an edge. Rachel didn't waste a moment. With the shield down, she accelerated toward the heart of the staging area, weaving through the chaos of the battle. Her jet shuddered as enemy fire grazed its wings, but she pushed forward, her focus unwavering. "This is it," she muttered, her eyes locked on the target ahead. Inside the control room, Alex and Emily watched anxiously as Rachel approached, the final stage of the mission. The Vorn ships bristled with turrets and defensive systems, all zeroing in on her position. "She's not going to make it," Alex whispered, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the desk. "She has to," Emily replied firmly. "She's our only chance." Rachel gritted her teeth as warning lights flashed across her dashboard. Her jet was taking damage, but she couldn't stop now. With one final burst of speed, she positioned herself directly above the staging area's core and fired Skybreaker again. The Vorn fleet began retreating, their formation breaking apart as they fled into the depths of space. Commander Xylar's voice crackled over the comms one last time. You have proven yourselves worthy adversaries. Document, Part 6 of the HFY claimed their fleet was invincible, until humanity proved them dead wrong. HFY Sci-Fi Stories. The victory at the Vorn staging area was bittersweet. The mission had succeeded, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone involved. Rachel Dawson and her squadron limped back to Earth, their jets battered and scarred from the fight. As they descended through the atmosphere, the sight of blue skies and green fields brought little comfort. Each empty seat in the cockpit was a reminder of lives lost, sacrifices made. Back at the facility, Alex Carter and Dr. Emily Fields waited anxiously for the surviving pilots to land. When Rachel stepped out of her jet, her face streaked with soot and exhaustion etched into her features, Alex felt a surge of relief mixed with guilt. Relief because she was alive, guilt because he couldn't shake the feeling that he could have done more to protect her and the others. You did it, Alex said quietly as Rachel approached. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotions he tried to keep hidden. We all did, Rachel replied, though her tone lacked its usual confidence. She glanced at the ground crew bustling around the damaged aircraft, then at the empty spots on the tarmac where missing jets should have been. But we paid a price. Emily joined them, offering a small nod of gratitude. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. Rachel managed a faint smile before turning away. She needed time to process what had happened, to honor those who hadn't come home. But there wasn't much time for reflection. The Vorn weren't gone. They were regrouping, rebuilding. Commander Xylar's final message echoed in everyone's minds. This is not the end. In the weeks that followed, humanity began to rebuild, not just cities and infrastructure, but hope itself. News of the second victory spread quickly, sparking celebrations across the globe. People cheered in the streets, waved flags, and held vigils for the fallen. Governments issued statements praising the bravery of the pilots and the ingenuity of the scientists who had developed Skybreaker. For the first time in months, there was a sense that humanity might actually stand a chance against the invaders. But beneath the surface, tensions lingered. The Vorn threat loomed like a storm cloud, distant but inevitable. Intelligence reports suggested they were gathering forces far beyond the solar system, preparing for another attack. No one knew when or how they would strike, but everyone agreed it was only a matter of time. At the research facility, Alex threw himself into improving Skybreaker. He worked late into the night, tinkering with prototypes and running simulations. Each new design was faster, stronger, and more efficient than the last. He pushed himself harder than ever before, driven by a mix of determination and guilt. If they had to face the Vorn again, he wanted to make sure no one else had to die. Rachel focused on rebuilding her squadron. She visited the families of the fallen pilots, sharing stories of their courage and promising to carry their legacy forward. It wasn't easy. Each conversation left her feeling heavier, but she knew it was necessary. These weren't just names on a list. They were people who had given everything for the cause. During one of these visits, Rachel met a young girl named Lily, the daughter of Dagger 3, Mark Bennett. Lily clutched a picture of her father, her eyes wide with confusion and grief. Rachel knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Your dad was a hero, she told her. He saved so many lives. I promise you we won't forget him. Lily looked up at her, tears streaming down her face. Will they come back? She asked, referring to the Vorn. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. Yes, they might, but if they do, we'll be ready. Your dad helped make sure of that. Meanwhile, Emily traveled the world, presenting the findings of Project Horizon to global leaders. Her goal was to unite humanity, not just militarily, but scientifically and culturally. The Vorn threat had shown how fragile Earth's divisions were. If humanity hoped to survive, they needed to work together like never before. Her efforts weren't without resistance. Some governments were reluctant to share resources or technology, clinging to old rivalries and fears. But Emily persisted, using data and logic to argue her case. Slowly, progress began to take shape. Joint research initiatives were launched, pooling knowledge and expertise from around the world. Factories ramped up production of Skybreaker units, equipping more fighters with the weapon that had turned the tide. Despite these advances, the looming shadow of the Vorn remained. Intelligence reports suggested that the invaders were regrouping, somewhere beyond the solar system, rebuilding their forces and planning their next move. Commander Zyler's parting words haunted everyone. This is not the end. One evening, Alex found himself alone in the lab, staring at a holographic model of the Vorn command ship. Its destruction had been a triumph, but it also raised questions. How had the Vorn built such advanced technology? Where had they come from? And why had they targeted Earth? Rachel entered the room quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Alex and sat down beside him. "You're thinking too hard," she said, sipping her drink. "I can't stop," Alex admitted. "Every time I look at this, I wonder what we're missing. They're out there, planning their next attack. What if we're not ready? We will be," Rachel said firmly. "Because we don't have a choice. Look at what we've already done. We faced something we thought was impossible and won. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we refuse to give up." Alex smiled faintly. "When did you get so wise?" Rachel chuckled. "I hang around geniuses too much. Rubs off." They sat in silence for a while, watching the hologram rotate slowly. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the lab in soft orange light. Despite the challenges ahead, there was a sense of quiet resolve in the air. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness and resilience. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Months passed, and humanity continued to prepare for the inevitable return of the Vorn. Fighter jets equipped with upgraded versions of Skybreaker patrolled Earth's orbit, standing guard against any sign of invasion. Scientists worked tirelessly to develop new technologies, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Cities rebuilt themselves, stronger and more united than before. Then, one day, the warning came. Satellites detected a massive fleet of Vorn ships approaching Earth. This time, they didn't bother with threats or ultimatums. They came straight for the planet, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Rachel and her squadron scrambled into action, launching into space to meet the invaders head-on. Behind them, Earth's defenses activated, firing missiles and energy beams at the incoming fleet. The battle was intense, chaotic, and brutal. Explosions lit up the sky as human and alien forces clashed in a desperate struggle for survival. But, this time, humanity had an advantage. Thanks to Alex's improvements and Emily's coordination, Skybreaker was more powerful and reliable than ever before. Rachel led her team with precision and determination, targeting key ships and disrupting the Vorn's formations. One by one, the alien vessels fell, their once invincible fleet crumbling under humanity's relentless assault. As the battle raged on, Alex and Emily monitored the operation from the control room. Screens displayed live footage of the fight, showing flashes of light and bursts of energy as human pilots fought valiantly against overwhelming odds. Despite the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, humanity could win. Finally, after hours of fighting, the Vorn fleet began to retreat. Their ships pulled away from Earth, leaving behind a trail of wreckage and debris. Commander Zyler's voice crackled over the comms one last time. "You are persistent," he said, his tone laced with grudging respect. "We will remember this." Rachel watched as the remaining Vorn ships disappeared into the depths of space. Exhaustion washed over her, but she felt a sense of pride. Against all odds, humanity had stood its ground. Back on Earth, the control room erupted into cheers. Alex sank into his chair, overwhelmed with relief and disbelief. Emily wiped tears from her eyes, laughing and crying at the same time. They had done it. Humanity had proven itself capable of overcoming even the most daunting challenges. But Rachel knew this wasn't the end. The Vorn would return someday, stronger and more determined than ever. And when they did, humanity would be ready. As she Gazed at the stars, Rachel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she believed in humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and persevere. Together, they had faced the impossible and won. And whatever came next, they would face it together.